Unit 3 Galileo. It is common knowledge today that the Earth is a planet revolving around the Sun. But there was a time, not many centuries ago, when even learned men believed that the Earth was fixed in space and the Sun and all other heavenly bodies went round it. The man who first brought to light the facts about them was a great scientist and astronomer called Galileo Galilei. He was born in the year 1564 in the Italian town of Pisa. In the year 1608, a man called Hans Lippershey, a native of Holland, invented the telescope, the instrument with which astronomers watch the skies. The telescope makes distant objects appear to be near and magnified several times over. When Galileo heard about the invention, he became greatly interested in it. He had at this time begun to study astronomy, and he saw the invention would be a wonderful aid to the astronomer. He set to work on making a telescope for himself and very soon succeeded in the making one which was better than the one Lippershey had made. Galileo's telescope was the first that was ever turned towards the stars. Looking through it, he saw 100 times as many stars as he could see with his bare eyes. He looked at the Milky Way, the broad white band of light seen across the sky at night, and found that it contained millions and millions of faint stars. He turned the telescope on the moon, and what he saw filled him with amazement. On the moon's surface, which seems so smooth, he saw high mountains and deep valleys like those on earth. Greatly excited by these discoveries, Galileo carried his telescope to the Venice and showed it to a learned man of the city. The people of Venice crowded at his house to have a look at the looking tube. They took it to the top of high buildings and looked through at the ships out in the sea. They saw ships 50 miles away appearing to be only 15 miles off. When the ruler of Venice was shown the instrument, he was greatly pleased with the invention and appointed Galileo professor for the life at the University of Padua. The first telescope that Galileo made magnified objects 3 times their size. Later he made one that magnified them 8 times. But he went on working on larger and larger ones until he made a telescope which brought objects 30 times nearer. With the aid of this telescope, he made important discoveries about the heavenly bodies. He found that the planet Jupiter had little moons that revolved round it. He found that the sun had spots on it and that spots always moved across its face. He found from his that the sun, like the earth, spins round itself. Some 50 years earlier, a Polish astronomer called Copernicus had declared that the earth was a planet like the other planets, and that like them it revolved round the sun. Copernicus could not, however, prove this to the men of his day. A few people paid any great attention to his ideas. Galileo was the first great student of astronomy to realize that the ideas of Copernicus were true, and that the first scholar to begin teach them at the university. His new built teaching caused great excitement among the learned men, because it meant that all their teaching was completely wrong. They began to oppose him, and many of them became his enemies. Then he got into trouble with the church. His ideas about the sun and the earth were different from the one Bible seemed to say. So the followers of the church began to look upon as a wicked and dangerous man. The church had in those days a court called Inquisition, which tried and punished those that consider unbelievers. Galileo was asked to appear before this court. He was questioned about his beliefs and was asked to kneel and declare that he no longer believed that the earth moved round the sun. He knew that if he refused to make his declaration, he might be put in prison and perhaps tortured. As he feared torture, Galileo obeyed their order. There is a story that as he rose from his knees after his public declaration, he whispered to himself, "But still it does move." The court ordered Galileo to teach his wicked ideas anymore. But Galileo not obey church's order for long. He continued his studies and after a time started teaching his ideas again. Besides, he wrote a book in which he criticized the old beliefs. When the book came out, the Inquisition once again ordered him to appear before it to be tried as a non-believer. After a long trial, he was sent to prison. But as he was now an old man, he allowed to go to home 22 days later.